Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back, Heat Seekers. It is Tuesday night. We've got arguably the greatest guest with two letters ever to appear on the Roto Heat Show. One of the good friends of the show, JL from Front Yard Fantasy, is with us tonight. And we're going to be talking trade targets. So if you're in a league with him, take notes and go after all these guys and send him the worst offers imaginable.
Good luck.
I'm sure he'll accept them.
Good luck.
JL, how are you tonight, brother?
I am doing great. I am very honored to be here. I am usually in the comments watching, and I know that Sully's been asking me to come on for a while now, so I'm hyped that we can actually get it going.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Everybody who's in here or watches now and in the future, make sure you go over. I don't see enough subscribers on Front Yard Fantasy, so I want to see this thing hit 1 million like tomorrow. So let's do this, people. Let's get these guys monetized on the internets. Mr. Sullivan, how are you tonight, my friend?
I'm good. I'm a little bit groggy, but I'm happy to be here. You know, we've been blessed with a really good run of guests in recent shows and episodes,
But this is the best, right?
This is it, man. I'm probably handing in my resignation after this because I can't imagine getting any better than this. But truly honored to have you, JL. We love you guys and what you do. Ton of respect for all of you over there. So I know I still got to get Josh on here coming up soon. I see him in the chat, so I'll be hitting him up later. Let's have some fun, talk some trades, and I'll try to stay awake for the whole show.
It may be more enjoyable if you fall asleep, though.
That would be fantastic. Brad and I can just sit here and talk.
I think my takes would probably get better for sure.
Are you a snorer, Sully? You strike me as a snorer.
Apparently I am. What does that mean, strike you as a snorer? What is it? Is there like a stereotypical look that a snorer has? Or?
It's like a character thing. I can't really, it's intangible.
Huh.
You look like you'd snore is what he's saying.
Yeah. You look like you got some sick apnea, bro.
That's probably accurate.
That machine behind you would also show us that.
Yes.
Mr. Sleep Apnea.
Sorry, I'm sure that was
I had it on during the show.
So tonight we are talking trade targets, but first and foremost, Mr. Sullivan's got some news and notes. So what's happening in the world that we need to know about?
Well, we have multiple reports out there that Mac Jones has done well enough in this spring minicamp to warrant a true quarterback competition. So my question to you both, and I'll start with our guest, JL, when does Mac Jones make his first start for the New England Patriots this year?
It's tough. It feels kind of like Mac, like Bill is playing his mind games right now. That New England offense is notoriously difficult to get a grasp on, though, and I don't think that Mac Jones is near ready. There are like positive reports coming out of camp. It's still spring, people. Like, you got to take all this stuff with like massive grains of salt, like trucks worth of salt. I think that Cam is going to start, and we could see Mac Jones come in if Cam has like a really tough time in the beginning of the season. But apart from that, I could see him going most of the season without starting.
Okay, Brad.
I mean, yes, it has to be a competition. Cam Newton wasn't exactly setting the world on fire last year.
No.
But also, to JL's point, it does take time to pick this thing up. So I would expect them to roll with Cam just because he's the veteran. But, you know, Mac Jones was the most accurate passer in college last year. So, I mean, yes, he was in an offense that was filled with talent. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it's not going to be easy for him to transition, but I got to think that they're going to do everything they can to get him ready quickly, because I think he gives them their best chance for success if they just throw him into the fire. Cam Newton is not doing anything that's going to get them over the top. But with the defense coming back healthy, you're going to get Hightower and a bunch of guys back. I could see New England being a much more formidable adversary, but you know, that division has gotten much better. And the Jets are no slouch either. I mean, with what they've added in the offseason, they'll at least be interesting. So, you know, give me probably midway through the season, you know, come bye week if things aren't going well, Mac Jones, but I still think Cam's their guy for now.
Yeah, I kind of see it as, I don't think Bill's going to handle another losing season. I don't think that really, you know, we saw how aggressive they were in free agency, maybe a little bit too aggressive, but that's a whole other topic. I'm kind of looking at it as around whenever they hit 3 losses. So I look at their schedule and it's Miami to start at home, and then they're in New York to play the Jets. Then it's in New Orleans, and then they have Tampa. So they got to win that Tampa game, right? Because that is Brady coming back to New England. But the week after that is Houston. And I think that's the perfect week to switch to Mac Jones if you're going to. So in and around week 5, I think is the earliest. But I tend to agree with you both. I think it's probably later on in the season, if at all. Like if they keep winning, then obviously you just keep rolling Cam out there. The additions that they made with the tight ends especially, I think was for Cam more than anything else. So we'll see what happens. Next one is similar to the first one. So the Bears are saying that Justin Fields looks really good in camp, but he's not going to start out of the gate, that Andy Dalton is their number 1 quarterback. So same question, Brad, to you first this time. When does Fields start for the Bears?
It's a very similar answer. Probably bye week time. With Chicago, the tough thing is they can win with Andy Dalton, I think, with the way their defense is built, the way that they can run the ball. You've heard reports here recently, and Rick's in the chat, he could probably confirm about David Montgomery supposedly going to the coaches think he'll better what he did his production last year. So, I would expect them to lean on the run to set up the pass again, and that would work for Andy or Justin Fields. Like, I think either one of them could run more play action type stuff. So, if in my mind, their division is much easier to compete in. It's basically Green Bay, and then Minnesota and Detroit are still trying to figure things out. I think Minnesota at least be interesting.
I think you're selling us a little short.
Well, I think both our teams are much behind the 8 ball at this point. I mean, Minnesota did everything they could to add as many old, aging secondary players to help compete, and I just don't think it's enough. And Detroit is 4 years away from having anything remotely close to a team. So what do you think, JL?
Yeah, I agree with you that I think it's going to be similar. The reports coming out of like the spring camp is that he's going to get a ton of work in the preseason. I think Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated gave like a rundown, basically saying that they're going to give him a ton of work in the preseason, see how he does, and then give him the shot to start week 1. But Nagy came out and said he's not. Andy Dalton's a starter, and it feels weird. Like it just feels like not a great move. But I could see him just like sticking to that for game 1. I don't think that it's going to take Fields as long as it's going to for Mac Jones, just because I feel like Fields is a more NFL ready quarterback. And I feel like the Bears offense is really set up for success. So I do think, and I also think Cam is better than Andy Dalton. So I think it would be like a little bit easier to be like, all right, Andy Dalton's not really performing and easily put Fields in there.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of agree with both of you. I think the biggest difference in Chicago is, unlike New England, like Belichick isn't losing his job at the end of this season. If Chicago doesn't win, there's a GM and a coach looking for work. So they're going to do whatever they have to do. And Rick has pointed this out on multiple occasions. I think it's very wise to not start him week 1 against that Rams defense. So wait a couple of weeks. Week 4, they have Detroit. Week 5, they have Las Vegas. So if you really need to make a change, to me, those are a little bit more friendly opponents for Fields. And to your point, JL, I agree. I think he's more NFL ready just because of his legs. I think he can make things happen. If things break down in front of him and he doesn't have an open receiver, he's comfortable enough to tuck it and run and get 6-7 yards and set him up for the next play. So I agree. Last one I have is about Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins apparently looks great in Baltimore. He's reborn in Baltimore. What is Sammy Watkins' fantasy ceiling this year, JL?
For fantasy, I'm not. It's still the Baltimore offense, right? We saw the talent of Rashad Bateman. Everyone was so hyped on him, and he goes to Baltimore, and instantly everyone's down on him just for the lack of opportunity, the lack of targets, which makes sense, right? You can't make fantasy points without targets. It's kind of like the crucial part of the equation there.
True.
And so I think that they're most likely gonna spread this around. I'm not surprised at all that Sammy's the best wide receiver in the camp. I mean, he's surrounded by rookies, and like people forget Sammy Watkins is a good NFL player. He's had a string of bad luck with injury. He hasn't been consistent, but he was a first round pick. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that he is shining in camp. I don't think it's going to translate to fantasy production. I don't think this is going to be the year for Sammy.
Yeah. It's been 6 years since this guy's had 1,000-yard season. Like, at what point do people stop making this a thing?
Never.
I mean,
Sammy, my boy.
All right, so there's your trade target number one. Go get Sammy Watkins.
I love Sammy. If anyone doesn't know, I'm a massive Clemson fan. When I went into Clemson, Sammy was playing with DeAndre Hopkins. It was fantastic.
Man, that must have sucked to watch that every week.
We had Taj Boyd throwing to him, so it wasn't great.
Sammy Watkins, although I do love the player, has never produced anything of value after a second season. So
because of the Bills, it's all the Bills' fault, Brad. I will stand by that. I'll die on that hill until the day I die. I will die on that hill.
That's great, but are you saying Baltimore's options are better than the Bills? Because
no, I'm saying the Bills ruined Sammy Watkins' career. It's not Sammy's fault. Sammy, you're perfect. It's the Bills' fault.
Listen, Sammy, I'm not hating on you, brother. You are an athletic marvel. You're a speed guy. You've done a great job when given the opportunity, but you just haven't stayed healthy. And Baltimore's not revitalizing your career. Like, it just isn't going to happen. I mean, if you'd have gone to, say, the Rams, go back to the Rams. I just said, you know what? Even with 700 receivers, maybe not Baltimore.
I still think he has health. If he stays healthy and plays 17 games, he can be a wide receiver too in this league. I still believe that. I think there'll be a little bit more volume in Baltimore, but Greg Roman's never really been a passing coordinator, so they're going to run the ball first and foremost as much as they can. Sammy not only was a first-round pick, he was the first wide receiver off the board in arguably the best wide receiver draft class in my lifetime. So the man is talented. We just need to see him stay healthy and comfortable in that offense, and we'll go from there. But that's it for news and notes. Bradley, take us away, my man.
All right. So all of you guys taking notes at home, this is where it gets good. We're talking about trade targets. We're also going to sprinkle in a few guys that you need to trade away. I know that there have been articles posted on rotoheat.com of guys that potentially you may want to get out from under. May rhyme with Merrick Menry. I don't know. Go to rotoheat.com and check some of that stuff out. But we're going to give it to our special guest tonight. So who is the first guy? Doesn't matter position, doesn't matter league type. Who are you going after? Like, who excites you that you're trying to target right now?
Yeah, I think the first one that comes to mind is Davante Adams. We've talked about it a lot on our daily stream. I think people are too down on Davante Adams. I think they're a little too worried with Aaron Rodgers, whether he's going to be there or not. I think he's most likely going to be there. First of all, get that out of the way. And even if he's not, we saw Davante Adams be still fantasy relevant without Aaron Rodgers. It was a small sample size. It was kind of a long time ago, like a year and a half, 2 years, or not a year and a half, like 2 years ago or so, Brett Hundley and all. But he is a top tier receiver, top tier receiving talent. And I think he's a good talent. You're starting to see him fall in drafts. He's going in back of the second, third round in dynasty leagues. I think he's a good target right now.
Mr. Sullivan, what do you think?
I agree 100%. I think he was like wide receiver 13 the year that Rodgers got hurt and missed half the season. So,
and the terrible QBs, just awful.
Right. And when you look at some of these guys that have had terrible quarterbacks, the elites like DeAndre Hopkins for the first 4 or 5 years of his career, Allen Robinson for the entirety of his career, there are just some guys that are just good enough to produce no matter who's out there. And I think Adams is absolutely one of those guys. Like, seriously, I don't care who the quarterback in Green Bay is. I do think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, much to my chagrin. But nonetheless, who are you going to throw the ball to?
Yeah.
Right?
Amari Rodgers, that's who.
Sure.
I just argued against my own point, but I had to for my Clemson guy.
It's okay. I like Amari Rodgers a lot. I like him a lot more with Aaron Rodgers, but I still like him a lot. So, yes. But no, to your point, Adams he's an elite wide receiver in this league. And I think he's approaching that age where the dynasty community wants to sort of like throw you in the garbage because you're 26, 27, 28 years old. And that's ludicrous to me.
Old man.
He's still easily got 3 to 5 fantasy productive years left. And that's, I think he could probably even go further just because of the way he plays the game. He's a very good route runner. I mean, he does a lot of the things really well in it. His game isn't predicated on making big plays, but he can. The dude gets like 115, 120 targets plus per year. I mean, you can almost guarantee it. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. So if you can get Devontae Adams, I did trade for him in one league around the draft because, come draft time, everybody's crazy and they'll trade you all sorts of nut jobs, trade offers. And I got Devontae Adams at the trade at the draft. And I would go after him as much as possible. If people were really willing to trade him, I would. I didn't really think people were willing to trade him because he's elite. I mean, he's one of those guys you can build your team around still. So if it's possible, go get him. Okay. Jordan, question. Do we think Jordan Love is that bad? Like Nick Mullins bad? No, I don't think he's that bad. I think he's got a big arm. I just think he needs development. I think he still needs a little bit of seasoning, but I think I'm excited about him in Green Bay. I hope Aaron Rodgers is gone. Probably more so for Detroit, but whatever. I
think Nick Mullins might be better.
I think that's the shot talking.
No, I'm dead serious. Like reports out of Green Bay where Jordan Love was so bad last year in practice that he was inactive almost every week. You don't draft a guy in the first round and have him inactive the entire season. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And Nick Mullins is not a world beater by any means, but we've seen him produce in this league. We haven't seen Jordan Love do anything.
Yeah, I don't think that we can base Jordan Love's talent based on the fact that he got drafted in the first round. I honestly think that was like a auto draft situation. I don't know how it works over there in Green Bay, but I really don't think that he's talented enough to be a viable, consistent QB1 like in the league. I think he's a solid backup, and I think he'll most likely be like that for his career.
So there you go, Jordan. 2/3 of the group say, yeah, he's that bad.
I don't like Mullins that much, so it's kind of tough. They're both sort of at the bottom of the garbage pail here.
All right, Mr. Sullivan, who are you targeting? Who's your guy?
I have a bunch of. Can I do just a bunch of guys? Like, because it's more a.
Follow the rules.
Okay, what are the rules again?
I'm
Canadian. I don't understand.
Oh gosh, give me a Tim Hortons coffee, and we'll talk about it later. One guy. Who is the first guy? The show does go for an hour. I know you're going to fall asleep on us here. The Dynasty Grandpa.
Jeez, I had.
Please change your handle to that.
What is it?
The Dynasty Grandpa.
Maybe I'll give that one a go. You can get off my lawn while you're at it. I will go with Gus Edwards then. So I had a whole theme of guys in offense, running backs that are still going to get work, that are an injury away from gold. But Gus Edwards is going to get 10 to 12 touches on a weekly basis. He produces every time he gets the touches. He's going to be involved at the goal line. He's not going to catch any passes, but nobody in Baltimore out of the backfield really does anyway. So I looked at his ADPs, like running back 43. That's ludicrous. So he's a value add in a startup. And I also think he's a guy that you can probably pluck away from someone for some depth on your roster. That I really believe that we're going to see more injuries than ever in this season coming up with that extra game. And some teams on, not on bye until weeks 12, 13, and 14 playing so many weeks in a row. I think Gus Edwards is a viable back end RB2 in the right scenario. And if Dobbins gets hurt, it's a lottery ticket.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the guy averages, like 135 to 140 attempts a season. So, that's not a terrible take. I think he probably is with what you started with. I wasn't sure what you was going to come out of your mouth. So
rude.
I will say that you should be able to get him extremely cheap because everyone seems to think that Dobbins is going to, somehow change what Baltimore does because Baltimore always shares the carries. So I don't know. What do you think, JL?
Yeah, as much as it makes me unhappy. Lamar Jackson's not going to throw to his running back. It's not the type of quarterback he is. And so I don't think we can project, as much as some of us love Dobbins, I don't think that we can project him to all of a sudden start catching passes. Now in Dynasty, I like Dobbins. I think he could be a value. I don't think now is the time to trade for him. But I like the Gus Bus target, especially for this year or, maybe this year and the following year. I'm not as excited in Dynasty. This is the type of move I would make if I was contending or I needed to shore up some depth in my running back situation, my team, balance it out a little bit. But I'm not particularly excited about Gus Edwards' long-term value.
Fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. But, running back shelf life isn't very long in the first place. So if you're looking for depth for 1, maybe 2 years, good target.
Yeah, and Sully's right. Like his contract is dirt cheap right now. Running back 43, it's super easy to probably trade for him and get the year or two of value. And he's most likely going to finish much higher than running back 43.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll keep the running back theme going here. There's so many players that I've been targeting right now because I subscribe to the Josh trading is fun scenario. I offer trades all the time. So I've been trying to trade for Chris Carson a lot because I think he's woefully underrated. People are just kind of ignoring the fact that Seattle didn't do anything to push him. I mean, Rashad Penny's still there, but he's the next Sammy Watkins. He's never really going to be a thing, even though I like the player. I just don't see him being a thing. Chris Carson will continue as long as he's healthy. So that when you trade for him, he's probably missing at least 2 to possibly 5, maybe 6 games a year, potentially. But when he plays, I mean, the dude is just on point. I mean, the last 3 seasons, 14 games, 15 games, 12 games, and he's averaging, between 4.5 and 5 yards per carry. I mean, that offense stayed the same. They added some pieces that I think are going to help him out, open up the running lanes a little bit more. They actually tried to do something with the offensive line. So I'm excited about Chris Carson. So far, I've been able to get him in 2 spots, and I didn't have to pay an extremely high amount. I'd have to pull up my trades, but I think I paid a back end first in both scenarios. And these are for teams that are competing. So I'm perfectly fine with that. Chris Carson's not a guy I'm looking at long-term, but for 1 or 2 years, I'm all on board with it. What about you, Mr. Sullivan?
I agree 100%. There's nothing there really that's preventing him from any challenges other than his own health, right? I do think that, the Seahawks, even though they've talked about wanting to go back to running first, their moves in this offseason and through the draft seem to indicate that they are going to let Wilson cook, for lack of a better term. I don't know, but I think Chris Carson is, he showed us that he can catch the ball out of the backfield pretty well in the last couple of seasons. He's going to get the bulk of the carries. That as much as I cling to hope in life that the Alex Collins fantasy relevance can come back again, it won't. Penny's kind of like Love. He just was a player that was drafted in the first round that shouldn't have been. And then you add to it, he's had a pretty catastrophic knee injury. So Travis Homer's nothing. So yeah, I don't see anything getting in the way of Chris Carson. I think it's a really safe RB2 with upside. 100% agree with that.
Mr. JL.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's very similar to Gus Bus in terms of dynasty. I don't feel like there's a ton of long-term value with Chris Carson, but I do like him significantly better than Gus Edwards. And so I think this year he's going to be fantastic. He doesn't have a ton of competition there. And I think the Seahawks are going to play well. They're going to play like the Seahawks, right? They're going to have that dynamic offense run by Russell Wilson, and Chris Carson's going to have opportunities to provide your team value. And it's a good value for your fantasy team right now.
Well, yeah, and he's going to outperform. I think his ADP is in the 20s right now, like RB 22, 21, something like that. So I would think he's going to outperform that easily because I think he's probably a high-end RB2 with low-end RB1 potential on a week-to-week basis, at least when he's playing. So
now, I do think trade targets like this require a little bit of like a caveat or like nuance, like explanation around like what scenarios you're trading for this type of player, because I'm not trading like a T. Higgins for Chris Carson. Or I'm not trading, someone with a lot of upside.
A Clemson player?
Basically any Clemson player. Sammy Watkins, no, for Chris Carson, no thank you. I'm keeping Sammy. But yeah, I'm not trading, most likely a long-term value unless I'm contending this year, right? And so this move has to make sense for your team. I'm certainly not saying, I don't want to speak for you two, but it sounds like you're in agreement with me that Chris Carson is not the type of guy you're going to go and get as like a CEH or something, someone who you're investing in long term.
No, he's a I know I can start him weekly right now, but I'm not going to pay players that are part of my core. So no, I probably wouldn't trade T. Higgins straight up for him either, though I am not as big a Clemson fan as you are.
No one is.
All right, JL. So who's next on your list of guys you're going after? So what Clemson player?
Next on my list, he did not play in Clemson, it's Courtland Sutton. I've been saying it all off season. I feel like it's one of like the closest things to like a sure thing in terms of the value rising. I feel like Cortland Sutton's value really can only rise this year. He's still relatively cheap compared to where I think he's going to be next year. And people forget because he had terrible QB last year, and he had an injury, and they forget. But he's extremely talented, and he was a pretty decent, serviceable wide receiver too in 2019. And he's going into a contract year after this, which most likely means his fantasy value is going to rise. He still doesn't have like a solid QB. Like I'm not hyped about Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, but I believe in the talent. In Dynasty, to me, it's all about looking for talent where there's like uncertainty in the situation. That's where you're going to find a value. Because if you have someone like, I don't know, Christian McCaffrey, there's no uncertainty. You're never going to get a value on Christian McCaffrey. So the way I look at these trade targets is where is there uncertainty plus I believe that the player's talented and that it's going to eventually correct itself. And Cortland Sutton is like a perfect example of that.
Cortland Sutton is amazing. Like I loved him coming out, and I've targeted him plenty of places. I still own him. When he was hurt, I wouldn't trade him. Like he probably is one of the. I don't even know why. I'm not even a big SMU fan. I mean, I follow Devi and do college stuff, but I've never been a big SMU fan. Watching his tape though, and watching the way he plays, he's so good. I mean, even with poor quarterback play, he's averaging, like 16, 17 yards a catch. I mean, in 2019, dude had 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, and that was with poor quarterback play. Andrew Lock, I think if they can build some chemistry, I think Drew Lock can at least get him the ball deep and do some things that I don't think Teddy can do very well. I think Teddy's more of a lower dink and dunk type guy. I think Jerry Jeudy looks better with Teddy than Cortland probably does, but I love Cortland Sutton. I would target him. I would pay a first for him and feel very pleased with that. Mr. Sullivan, what about you?
And by the way, all of those points apply to Jerry Jeudy.
Right.
I do. I love Jerry Jeudy too.
Yeah, I'm a big Cortland Sutton fan, and I had plenty of shares of Cortland Sutton that I used as trade chips to go all in a bunch of leagues last year. And I regret most of those trades now, just that I didn't really win all those leagues that I tried to go all in on. So, buyer's remorse. But, he's sitting at wide receiver 25 as an ADP right now, which is wrong to me. That's too low. I'm one of the few people that still somewhat believes in Drew Lock. I think that he had a bit of a tough rookie season with injury, and then he had no off season with a new offense and a new coordinator. COVID ripped that team apart last year. Now he's going to get a full off season and a bunch of reps. And I think, Shermer's done well with lesser quarterbacks in the past, and he's got just tons of weapons in that offense. So Sutton makes everybody better in that offense. He makes Jerry Jeudy better. He might even make KJ Hamler better. So I think that's a great shout out. I think Cortland Sutton is a guy that should absolutely be targeted in trades, because as much as Dynasty is supposed to be for, future years to come, there's so many reactionary Dynasty managers, and, they didn't, he didn't play last year other than he missed week 1 and then he tore his ACL in week 2. So he didn't really play. So out of sight, out of mind, I think that's a great call out for a guy to go after. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love what you said about dynasty managers are reactionary, despite the fact that they will tell you until their face is blue that they're not, and that they're objective, and that they're like not subject to these cognitive biases. You can see it. You can see it in how people react on Twitter. You can see it how they react to certain players. Just pay attention to how people are talking about players. And how that changes over time, and you start to get a feel for that.
Twitter has a new RB1 in Dynasty every week.
We were just talking about Cam Akers. We were playing poll perception today, and we were talking about Cam Akers and how like the hype has sort of shifted a little bit. Miles Sanders as well. There's just and Joe Mixon is a good one. There's just shifted opposite directions just slightly, and nothing has happened all season. Not a single thing.
Yeah, it's funny how the community can get behind something and push it. It's almost like GameStop or AMC. Just all of a sudden, everybody's doing something, and I don't know how that happens, but it happens.
Yeah, don't let anyone ever say you can use wisdom of the crowds, like that statistical method or whatever, because wisdom of the crowds is like a statistical method, for guessing. Like imagine if you had to guess like the gumballs in a jar or whatever.
Yeah.
But it requires that the guesses are independent of each other.
Correct.
And we are like the fantasy community is not independent of each other at all. Everybody is influencing each other. So you can still get these sort of swings where everyone's influencing each other. And just because everyone believes it doesn't mean it's going to be true.
I agree.
And I would love to see somebody build out some sort of statistical collection of data about when you go to sell to try to react to one of these injuries or something, if it actually works out. Because anytime I see somebody go all in to try to win it, they tend to just screw the pooch for the future because they sell Cortland Sutton or they sell guys that are hurting their long-term play. Like anytime I've done it, like
Randy Dalton,
trade a first for Andy Dalton. I mean, whatever you would do. And
Devontae Adams for Sammy Watkins.
So I
thought you froze. That was great.
I didn't really know how to respond to that because that was almost as bad as trading a first for Andy Dalton. So
no, it wasn't. I'll wear that till I die.
And if it gets up, all right, public service announcement. People, if it gets to the point where you have multiple injuries on your team, don't try to sell to win. Yeah. Like, don't listen. Don't do what Mr. Sullivan did. Just wait.
No, but I didn't make that trade to stay to. Well, I did make that trade. I don't know what I'm saying. Never mind. Carry on.
Where's the poop, Sully? Where's the poop?
Where's the poop?
It was in. It always comes back to poop with these guys. I tell you.
I'm just saying.
No, you're right. I'll zip it.
So don't go crazy. There's always next year, and remember, draft capital come draft season gets crazy valuable. Just don't waste it. All right, so that was my PSA. Don't forget to tip your waitress and get your pets spayed, neutered, and all those things. Mr. Sullivan.
People.
Yeah, 20%.
Yeah.
Mr. Sullivan, who's your next individual? One.
I have two, and I don't care what the rules are anymore. There's too many undervalued guys. We're only here for an hour. It's two wide receivers. They're pretty much back-to-back in ADP. It's Michael Thomas and Keenan Allen. What is wrong with you people? Their ADP of both of them is, Michael Thomas is at 36 overall and Keenan Allen is 43. This is crazy. These guys are proven fantasy commodities. Go get them in your leagues. Go now. We'll stay till the end of the show and then go get those guys.
Ricky just lost it when you said Michael Thomas, I bet. Absolutely lost his mind. He loves Michael Thomas. He's been saying it all offseason. He should. No, I completely agree with you.
Michael Thomas was a top 12 wide receiver every single season until last year, and it was injury plagued. So it doesn't matter who his quarterback is. He produced with Teddy Bridgewater. Keenan Allen, same thing. All the guy does is catch passes and produce. And people labeled him as injury prone because he ruptured his spleen in his second year and then tore his ACL. Yeah. Those aren't injury prone injuries. Those are just freak occurrences, people. These guys are elite. Go get them both.
Yeah.
Craig's awesome.
I know. He does. It's wonderful. I could see it too. Your head shaking at the
shake
clouds.
My fist more, hey, when I do this stuff. If I'm going to go with the grandpa.
It's just a spleen. Leave him alone.
What's the matter with you kids? That vaccine's coursing through the veins now, boys.
Is that what it is? I thought it was the moose stuff.
Could be the moose stuff.
MT dumb undervalued. Yeah, Rick, you're right. I mean,
100% he's right.
I don't know why. I mean, he's one of the few guys that I think it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, he will be perfectly fine. It could be in the same game, it could be Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, and he will still be fine.
And it will be, right? Like there's going to be a lot of both of those guys on the field at the same time. And I think part of the Michael Thomas piece is, and the biggest piece is that Drew Brees is no longer there. And that Michael Thomas is labeled as a slant receiver. Well, he was running slants because Drew Brees couldn't throw the ball more than 15 yards, right? So I think he has more routes in his route tree. And then you compound that with the thought that Jameis Winston is going to be the number one quarterback there. And his career stats throwing the slant route are poor. So it's a bunch of numbers mashed together to try to come up with a take. And I just think it's ill-advised. I think the talent of his first 4 or 5 seasons being elite overrides anything else.
Yeah, Keenan Allen is a guy that I absolutely love. I don't care what anybody says about him. He will always be what Jarvis Landry wanted to be when he grew up, because everybody acts like Jarvis Landry was this most insanely consistent receiver. Like Keenan Allen is the epitome of a guy that can just do it all. He could be a big play guy. He could be an underneath guy. I mean, with a rookie quarterback like Justin Herbert, he still looked elite in my humble opinion. He's a guy that you need to go get. If somebody's selling him, you better buy him. Same with Michael Thomas. I haven't had any luck. I have tried actively to trade for Michael Thomas in a few leagues, and nobody's really selling. And when the offer does come back, it's still pretty high. So I would agree absolutely on both of those for sure.
See how I broke the show rules and it worked there? Just point that out.
I didn't say it worked.
It worked.
I just let you.
You let it happen.
Reeled you right in, brother. You picked up Keenan Allen and went with it.
Listen,
just like kids, you're teaching them bad habits.
Who's going to abuse the old guy? I mean, like, who wants to be known as the guy that beat up an old man? I mean, it just doesn't seem fun.
The flipping respect around here is excellent.
And that's why we love the old guy. Screaming at the clouds and telling people to get off his lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screaming at the clouds.
What would you, here we go. What would you look to get for Akers? So our boy Clove in the chat wants to know, what are you looking to get if you're going to sell Akers? And I guess my first statement would be if your team is in a position to win, I don't know that you sell a player like that unless you can get a really good return on it. But JL, what would you be looking for if you're going to trade this guy?
Yeah, it's a really tough question, right? To like, who could you trade for? I mean, the easy answer to that is go look at where Cam Akers is going in his ADP and look for players around that. But my general advice for those types of questions is like, it's going to depend on your league. Go look for a team in your league that could really use that running back help and capitalize on the hype of Cam Akers. And I don't think it's just hype. I think Cam Akers definitely has value. I would put him in like the upper, like closer to the front of the list of these sophomore running backs. Like maybe one or two of them is not going to quite pan out the way that we think this season. And so I would be okay trading him away, but make sure you're capitalizing on his current market value and see where you have weaknesses in your team and go see if you can get more value in return than you think he's going to have next season.
So in a roundabout, you don't have an exact answer, but
look around where he's going as ADP is like the best answer I could give is like, that's going to be the similar value that you can get on a 1-for-1 trade with Cam Akers.
I agree with that, but I think if you're trading him around his ADP, you're probably doing a running back for a running back trade that I don't know necessarily makes a whole lot of sense, but it might. I'm of the belief that you trade your running backs and continue to trade your running backs until you feel that you're a legitimate contender. There's no point in sitting on the early years of these running backs. Like if you're not a contender and you have Cam Akers, I support trying to sell him. To John Luke's point, there's no definitive answer there, right? Like it's not just behind door number 2 is what you get for Cam Akers. It's convoluted and you have to kind of figure it out. And if you're a rebuilding team, I would say you try to get some startable assets, youth with upside, maybe throw some draft capital into that transaction as well, or you just keep Cam Akers, right? Because if you truly believe that Cam Akers is going to have a good season, you're probably better off to trade Cam Akers in week 6 than you are right now.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I wouldn't be looking too far out. Like I try to keep it within like a 3-year window or so, 3 to 4 years in Dynasty. And the truth is, if these running backs are as elite as we think, they're still going to be relevant in 3 to 4 years. So I think that even if you're not contending, it might make sense to keep Akers. But here's what you go do: go talk, reach out to a couple of your league mates, and just start a conversation. Talk to them and maybe bring up Cam Akers and just feel them out, see how they're feeling about it. I guarantee you one of them, I mean, it's likely, I don't guarantee you because it's probably not 100%, but it's likely one of them is going to be all about Cam Akers and willing to talk a trade with you, talk opportunity.
If you were really looking to trade Akers right now, in my mind, I'd want a young wide receiver. I would want a first next year. Like I would try to really, because draft picks are so low in value now until kind of early NFL season, I would try to get more I've been targeting a guy like T. Higgins. He was going to be one of my guys, but our Clemson fan keeps bringing him up, so he's not really a trade target because we've mentioned him 70 times on here. He's the Kyle Pitts of this show. But
whoa.
But I would go after a young receiver like that, a first round pick, and maybe even something else. Maybe if you can get something else in the deal, I would look to do that, because if you're trading a running back that, at least at this moment, projects to be, one of the top probably 10 to 15 backs in the league, you could easily be in a position where you're still rebuilding, and maybe you just got lucky and you drafted him, but your team still needs help. So I would trade him and try to get pieces that are going to be part of your core. And, in my mind, it's a young receiver, first round pick plus, and people do it. I see people do it all the time. I mean, they make all sorts of crazy trades like that. I was joking with Sully before we went on the air. I'm in the middle of a rookie draft right now, and it's in an IDP league. So there's a lot, the player pool's bigger, but somebody traded the 3-2 for Kenny Golladay. Like, Kenny Golladay is a, probably a wide receiver, low end wide receiver 2, at least. He's worth more than that. So it's just crazy town, right? To me. So I would go big.
So let me ask you guys this. Would you trade Michael Thomas and a 2023 first for Cam Akers? Or Cam Akers for Michael Thomas and a 2023 first?
Yeah.
The easy and cop-out answer is sort of roster dependent, but
yes.
I said yes. I didn't cop out.
I think that's a very reasonable offer that I would most likely accept. Yes.
Even though the pick is way too far away, but
that's the key to me. Is
in a loaded class though.
It is. It's looking quite sexy for sure.
Oh, we got a good one here in the chat. Joe Mixon and Judy or Cam Akers?
That's Mixon and Judy.
Mixon and Judy all the way.
Yeah, me too.
Easily, because I love Joe Mixon. I love some Joe Mixon.
I think Jerry Judy's the prize in that trade, but I also do like Joe Mixon. And with Giovanni Bernard gone, I think his upside is.
My hot take is Mixon will outperform Cam Akers this year.
I don't think that's too much of a hot take.
I don't either, but
it's warm.
The community is coming around on Joe Mixon.
I think what's really interesting with the Rams backfield is Malcolm Brown is gone. I think the running back to target in that backfield is Darrell Henderson. When you consider ADP value and everything else that's going on, he was going to be one of those guys in my package at the beginning that I wasn't allowed to present.
Okay. So, Connor says, I'm rebuilding and got him for the 201 and just don't think he'll score what his ADP is and want to capitalize on him. So you're rebuilding and you flipped him for a second. I would try to flip him again and get even more value out of him for sure.
You should be able to get way more value than that now. Yeah.
Easily. All right. So Wilson asks, why do so many doubt Jalen Hurts as a number one? He was 63%, 23 and 8 as a freshman. Yeah. In college, he played well.
Yeah.
Why do we doubt him in the pros?
Same reasons he got benched in college and had to leave. I mean, he certainly has weaknesses in his game, right? Arm strength and plenty of other things, and he relies on the run. I think there's a different conversation here between fantasy and NFL, right? Like, yeah, I think as a fantasy quarterback, his rushing gives him a nice floor. I would put like some thought into the fact that Jalen Hurts might not retain his value for the next season or two. I think that he could have a good year. I'm not projecting that. I'm not saying it's the most probable outcome, but it's there. There is an outcome where he is not the starter for the Eagles next season or the season after.
I think it's very feasible that he's a top 5 fantasy quarterback this season and not the starter next season. I think those two things can coexist. You look at what the Eagles did at the draft with the trade with Miami and a few other moves and how they've accumulated some draft capital for next season. They're all in position. If Deshaun Watson all of a sudden goes onto the market, they're one of those teams that is sitting there with the capital that's necessary to require an asset like that. So the fact that we're talking rock, paper, scissors, and they haven't named a quarterback definitively, there's some tea leaves you can read that's a little bit weird coming out of Philadelphia. I do believe that he's their starting quarterback this year. I do believe that he's going to be a fantasy relevant, viable quarterback, but I don't know if to JL's point, I don't know if he's a good real life NFL starting quarterback.
I mean, let me ask you guys this. Do you feel like his value could get any higher? Like, is there a world in which Jalen Hurts is more valuable as a fantasy quarterback in the next 2-3 seasons?
Probably not, but if he has a big season this year, I mean, maybe, but I doubt it, because now there's a lot of hype and not a lot of production. So I think at this point there's some mystique. It's they've been at the bar late at night. Everybody's been pounding them back, and now the goggles are on.
Yeah,
nice.
That's
right? Great analogy.
I love that. Yeah, and that's exactly my point. Is I feel like he's already sort of reaching his ceiling. Maybe not quite there yet, but really, how much higher can he go, or can his value go as a QB? As a QB, a fantasy QB.
I think that point by Rick right there is absolutely bang on. Right, that we're so infatuated with the dual threat quarterback, rightfully so. So our hot takes episode, I think he was one of the quarterbacks that I projected for 4,000 yards and 1,000 rushing yards. If he does that, maybe his value goes up. If Devonta Smith is what the Eagles want him to be, and not like the other 5 receivers they've drafted in the last 3 or 4 years, potentially. But it'll take
your
a
mouth,
lot.
Jalen Reagor. Shut your mouth. Jalen Reagor's going to be good.
I hope
he's going to be way better in the slot than he was out wide, but I'd chill your expectations on that guy, but that's just my thought. So
shut up.
I like how you get real into the mic screen when you get mad at me, right? Like dad, like your dad, you're disappointed in me.
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. And also I will point out that Nick Mullins is on this roster, so it could be Nick Mullins' season again.
Why has Nick Mullins come up so much in this show?
I'd have bet a lot of money that Nick Mullins wouldn't have come up at all, and he's come up at least 3 times. So it's good.
He's actually come up more times than your 101 in rookie draft. So there you go.
Sammy Watkins,
Kyle Pitts.
Oh. He's not a rookie. I don't know why that joke doesn't make sense.
GL likes Sammy Watkins so much he's still drafting him in rookie
as a
drafts.
rookie. Yeah.
GL on the clock. You can take. I'll take Sammy Watkins.
Give me Sammy 101
because he's on the waiver.
Now
wire.
She's a bust. Bunch of sheep out there.
Look at that, Sully. Just drink it in. Just you know what?
And J Jaw wasn't overrated, and it's too soon to give up
on
him.
That's how it works.
Hold on. Let's
all this Eagle wide receiver.
We're muting him. That's ridiculous.
They're all the same.
When you have a converted quarterback as one of your best wide receivers, there's some opportunity in that offense. So I like Jalen Reagor. I think he will be way better in the slot than he was out wide. But again, keep your expectations realistic.
I went back and watched tape as soon as we hit the offseason because I have Jalen Reagor in a lot of dynasty leagues, and I wanted to see like how much of his poor production was him versus like Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz could just not hit the guy on any of these routes. He targeted him a bunch of times, could not hit him on like little slant routes or cross routes. I think that Jalen Reagor is a trade target.
There you go. I like it. I would target him, but I think I own him in just about every league I have. So
trade with yourself.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with acquiring him for where he's at in ADP. I'm just saying, what are your expectations to get out of him? Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
We got some DGB love in the chat.
DGB love.
Wow. Oh my God. Mullins, Beckham. This is a hell of a show.
This is a hell of a show.
This 5 years ago, this show would have been rocking.
Yeah.
Reagor was awful in reception perception. How much of that was him? How much of that was QB? I mean, that's the tough thing is.
And no other wide receivers on that team. Don't you dare say Travis Fulgham. I swear to God.
Like that was.
I didn't like him when Detroit drafted him. So
that's a wonderful example of the dynasty community overreacting to something. Like for about 4 weeks there, like DJ Shark in year 2, how the community overreacted on that guy. It happens. And no, I just think Philadelphia it's a hot mess, but looks like the O-line's healthy and it's going to be a lot better. We'll see what they do this year for sure.
So we got 10 minutes left, and I know you, Mr. Sullivan, at least had somebody you wanted to talk about selling.
Sure.
So I know we said trade targets, but we're going to flip it and sell targets. I don't really know if that makes any sense, but who are you selling right now?
How crazy you want to get?
I don't know. You're the one that said you had somebody. I don't know. Why don't we get Rob Sullivan crazy? Because so far tonight, I don't know what is coming out of your face.
I have. Wow. My number one sell guy probably would be Derrick Henry.
I like that.
8 NFL running backs have had 2,000-yard rushing seasons. The previous 7 have all seen a decline of at least 34% in their rushing totals. Their yards per carry is dropped by over a full yard. And the year after their 2,000-yard season, it was the lowest yards per carry of their career. And 5 of the 7 of them missed time. So I'm a big believer in historical data, and I use it to form a lot of my decisions. And Derrick Henry adds up to me as a guy that is a huge sell target, because I don't think you'll ever get more for him now. Or I think you'll get more for him now than you ever will if you don't trade him.
I typically am a gut trader, and I traded him last year at the trade deadline in a few leagues. So I agree with you, but I was already there. So thanks for joining
I'm with you, Brad. I was like so late to like I was like not going to buy into Derrick Henry for so long, and then he did it like 2 or 3 seasons in a row, and I was like, all right, I'm finally turning around. And then immediately it was like, all right, he's getting old. time to get off this boat. It was the quickest ride of my life on the Derrick Henry hype train.
What is Craig's comment?
Someone needs to tell Sully he didn't get 2,000 rushing yards last year.
Who did?
I'm assuming he means Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry,
but he did.
I don't know. I wasn't looking. I trusted your judgment. Maybe Craig's just messing with you because he knows that you're all vaccinated up or something today. Yeah, he had 2027.
57 or something, right?
27. Yeah. Man, Craig, you're too busy making you're making puns.
Get off my lawn, Craig.
And you're too busy not paying any attention. So there you go. Way to go, Craig. I'll tell you.
I was hoping for more of a fight with that. I have a couple more if you want to go nuts, but you guys go ahead.
I've never been a big Derrick Henry fan, so sell targets. I mean, every time I go into a trade, like everybody's a sell target. Like I could sell anybody, and it wouldn't surprise me. Like, and currently I'm drafting in the league, and because I never bought, so I can't sell what I don't have. Sure. I even sold a T. Higgins share last year.
You son of a gun!
And then I bought him in the offseason because Jamar Chase got drafted and he was a little cheaper, so I bought him back at a discount.
Freaking
I like stuff like that.
Take a stance, Brad.
Hey man, what did I say a few weeks ago? Trade myself into good decisions or whatever. I'm doing it. I do it. So I don't know, Mr. Sullivan, what else do you got? Who else do you want to sell? Or JL, is there somebody that you're selling?
Oh, I got a bunch.
Oh, there you go.
I'll bring up Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is one. He just got Taylor. Always here just to harass, but then he never follows through. He just threatens.
Great to have Taylor in here.
Great to have Taylor. Yeah, Tyler Lockett is, he just got a big contract. I think people are still valuing him as a, solid wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Oh, I'm moving Tyler Lockett so quickly. He is completely inconsistent. Yeah. Most of his value comes from touchdowns and fantasy. We saw that this past year, right? Weeks 1 through 4, he was incredible, top 5 wide receiver, and then just completely vanished. And that's the type of wide receiver you're going to get. Those types of players in fantasy are not good for your team because you don't know when to play them, right? They might have those streaks, great for best ball, get them in best ball, but in dynasty, no, thank you. I'm moving on from Tyler Lockett.
It's tough because I want to. I have 1 share left, but I can't get anyone to buy at a reasonable price.
Yeah, you got to find someone who still believes, which may be harder to find than I'm.
Just wait for them to have that week, Brad, and trade him then. Right? Because it'll happen. Like to Jail's point, I think after week 4, he was wide receiver 1 overall because he had the 50-point week against Arizona.
Yep.
And everybody was like, holy cow. And then I think he had 50 points in the next 6 weeks combined or something like that. It was right off a cliff. That's a good call. I think that's absolutely a sell.
And Ty in the chat, he moved Lockett, Jacobs, and a first for Ayuk and Fields and Superflex.
I like it.
Huge win. Well done.
I really like Josh Jacobs. I just hate Vegas. Like I wish they would just trade him or do something because he's such a talented back.
Just John Gruden.
I just wrote about Josh Jacobs, and it's really interesting when you look at how his workload in Vegas is just he's not using that guy properly. Like he proved that he could catch the football in Alabama, and he did it really well. and he was so productive there on almost no touches. I think the most touches he had at Alabama was like 180 in his final season. And then the Raiders get him, and then it's just Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington and now Kenyon Drake. And it's like, I don't understand it, because Jacobs is good. And he just scares me because I have no idea what they're going to do with him.
Yeah.
So Rick's statement, he wants to know, same thing happened to DK last year in the second half. Are we trading him?
I think it's perfectly fine to trade him. The difference between him and Tyler Lockett is 1, age, and 2, talent. I believe DK Metcalf is much more talented than Tyler Lockett. He's going to be a much more relevant wide receiver for the next coming years, purely just based off of like size and athletic ability, right? He's much more difficult to guard than Tyler Lockett. And that's no disrespect to Tyler Lockett. I think he's a great athlete, but in terms of consistency, we saw that like yank on the chain of remember DK Metcalf, like halfway through the season, was a lot of people's wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. He hopped up real quick. And now that's not the case, right? And that's, again, it's that recency bias. And it's the fact that talent gives you some aspect of it. Your environment's going to give you the other part of that equation. And if you're not consistent, if that talent's not good enough to make you consistent, then you're not going to be a great fantasy asset. I'm not saying DK Metcalf is not a great fantasy asset for the coming years, but I would be perfectly fine trading DK at his current value for another player around that value.
Our boy Jay Wall, don't overreact too much because of his youth.
I think the other difference, in addition to age and talent, when you look at Lockett versus DK, is Lockett fell off while Russell Wilson was still playing at an elite level, and the offense was pretty pass heavy for a Seattle offense. DK kind of fell off when Russell Wilson fell off, when they sort of reined it in Seattle in the back half of the season and tried to go back to the ground pound game more. I think DK Metcalf has all the upside in the world. Doesn't mean I wouldn't trade him, because I think, those guys that are elite like that should bring you a nice big return. And again, it's roster specific. If I'm a bottom of my standings team in my league and I have DK Metcalf and I can trade him to a contender for a pile, makes sense to do it. But I wouldn't target to trade him just because of his inconsistencies. I think there's different layers to that onion than there are with Tyler Lockett.
Like the great philosopher, $1 Million Man said, everybody has a price.
To Rick's other point here, that it's more of an offensive scheme type of thing. I don't think that it's just scheme for Tyler Lockett. I don't think his talent is great enough to overcome his touchdown dependency. I think we're mistaking touchdowns for talent, and that's the disconnect there between him and DK.
The funny thing about his touchdown dependency is, you're right, he is, but it's also probably one of the most unsustainable rates of the last 3 seasons that you'll ever see, is because that's who Russell Wilson looks for in those situations.
Exactly.
And he catches the football. So if he doesn't score touchdowns, you're right, he's not going to be good for your fantasy team, but he has such upside. So I think there's value to sell him just because of that.
Like I said, best ball, man, Tyler Lockett is a great guy to target.
There you go. And that is it. It's 10:28, people. So we've got 2 minutes left. I like to take the end of the show and give our special guest, which we had a blast with you, Mr. JL, give you time to promote everything you got going on. And also, fun side note, we're going to talk again within a 24-hour period. You guys come tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I'm going to be jumping on their show, and they're going to make me look dumb because I'm terrible at games. And
just like Wife Swap. Basically, Wife Swap is what we've done here. Sully,
it is.
Sully seems shocked by that.
I got nothing.
He got excited is what happened. You can't see it. But
I am excited. I'm excited for you to go onto that show and represent Roto Heat and win, because none of us have.
None of you? That's not true.
No. Who
did
won?
Craig win?
No, Craig did tiers.
Everybody wins in tiers.
Everybody wins. It's like Switzerland. But no, both Rick and I fell a little bit short. And now Rick's not watching tomorrow, so we don't have to worry about that. But yeah,
I'm gonna win just because he's not watching.
Yeah. But no, I look forward to you going on there tomorrow, just like I look forward to it every day, Monday to Friday, because it's the best hour of my day.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much, Sully. Yeah, if you're unaware, I'm part of Front Yard Fantasy. We have a fantasy football game show that we stream every weekday at 3 p.m. where we take popular game shows or Jackbox games and we adapt them for fantasy football. And it is a good time. We goof, we laugh, we cry sometimes. We just get super competitive about stupid stuff and just compete, with these made up games. They are a blast. You can usually find the Roto Heat guys in the chat there. Sully, for some reason, has just been ignoring us and
not been basic, man.
Trying to get to the bottom of that. I think I might have insulted him somehow. Maybe said something wrong about Canadians. I don't know.
No,
we'll find
not
out.
Enough. There's just not enough bottom golf conversation for me, so I'm seeking that out somewhere else. Yeah, no, I'll be there 100% tomorrow, and I need to apologize to Craig. Yes, Craig, you did win in the battle royale.
He did.
True. Yeah. I've tried to
it was
like that from my memory because G-Man Jay and I pooped our pants in the last couple of rounds there.
Yeah, well, I got screwed on the last poll. It wasn't even fantasy football related.
You kind of screwed yourself on the last poll. So.
Did I, though?
You still have it. I love it.
I brought it up on the stream today, too. Y'all are the weird ones for saying you'd rather sleep with Venom and Pennywise over Thanos, the handsome villain from MCU.
88%.
I don't want to butt chin. Sorry.
The best comment of that whole show.
It's like a grill chin.
The best comment of that whole show was Maria's talking about how uncomfortable it's been knowing that she's watched all those movies with you over the years. That was fantastic.
Oh my goodness!
And I can do this for a couple more hours. You guys want to keep going or what?
Oh yeah.
Listen. In the early days of Roto Heat, we used to do it for a couple hours.
We did,
but we respect your time. We love you guys, and we want to leave you waiting and wanting and looking for a little bit more. So come back next week. We've got more special guests. Isn't next week Sam Wallace? No, who do we have next week? Yeah, it's Sam Wallace next week. So yeah, it's going to be a fun show next week. I have no idea the topic, but I know we have one. You guys got to show up next week to find out what we're talking about.
Yeah, I need to show up next week to find out what we're talking about. We need to have a conversation about that. But hey, everybody, seriously, tomorrow, tune in, watch Brad win on horse, watch JL or Josh or Simon make a fool out of themselves. But more importantly, take a bite of the apple. But more importantly, subscribe and like and click the notification bell over there. You guys will thank me later. It's a great hour every day. So please go over there and support our friends. We would greatly appreciate it.
We thank you guys. We love y'all. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Bye.
Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to. Do it.